Right now, as you watch this, your brain is taking notes about everything you experience, every detail, every face, every word, every feeling. The names of people who walked past you today, the song that played in the cafe, the conversation you had at lunch, all stored, the exact shade of your shirt this morning, the temperature of the water in the shower, the way the light hit the window. Every single piece of information your senses captured today has been physically written into the connections between the neurons of your brain. Tonight, while you sleep, a system inside your skull is going to read through that entire archive and decide what stays and what disappears. By tomorrow morning, your brain will have permanently deleted somewhere between 15 and 20% of what you experienced today, with zero notification. You will never know what was erased, you will never miss what is gone, and tomorrow you will continue as if nothing happened. Tonight, we are going to explain exactly how this process works, what triggers it, and which memories your brain decides are worth keeping. We will reveal the specific brain chemical that does the deleting, where it lives, and why evolution designed it to operate only at night. We will explain why some memories from 20 years ago still feel vivid, while last Tuesday is already mostly gone from your mind today. We will show you the moment in your sleep cycle when the deletion happens, and what kinds of information are most likely to vanish. And we will reveal what scientists have learned about what your brain prioritizes when it silently edits your entire life every single night. The process is called synaptic homeostasis, and it is one of the most disturbing and elegant systems your brain has ever evolved to maintain. Without this nightly editing, your brain would be physically unable to function past your 20th birthday, but with it, you lose pieces forever. By the end of this video, you will understand why every morning the person who wakes up is slightly different from yesterday. To understand what your brain deletes, you first have to understand how it stores anything in the first place during the day. Your brain is made of roughly 86 billion neurons, each one connected to thousands of others through tiny junctions called the synapses. Every time you have an experience, certain synapses are activated, certain pathways fire, and that pattern of firing leaves a physical trace behind. The trace is called a synapse, and it is a small protein bridge between two neurons that strengthens slightly every time you use it. The more often a memory pattern fires, the stronger the synapse becomes, and the easier it becomes for that same pattern to fire again. This is what learning actually is at the physical level, the gradual strengthening of specific neural connections through repetition and reinforcement over time. The problem is your brain cannot tell which experiences are important and which are noise while you are still awake and experiencing them. So during the day, it stores everything indiscriminately, strengthening every synapse that fires, creating new connections constantly, building up a massive archive. By the end of an average day, your brain has accumulated millions of new synaptic connections, an enormous biochemical traffic jam of information. If this accumulation kept going forever without any cleanup, your brain would overheat, run out of space, and stop forming new memories entirely. This is where sleep enters the picture, and where everything you experience becomes vulnerable to nightly editing without any warning at all. Around 2 hours into your sleep, when you enter the deepest phase of slow-wave sleep, your brain begins a process called downscaling. The neurons begin to systematically weaken every synaptic connection that was formed or strengthened during the previous day, all of them at once. The strong connections weaken slightly, the medium connections weaken moderately, and the weakest connections collapse completely and are erased from existence forever. This weakening is done by a small molecule called a phosphatase, which clips the protein bridges holding each synapse together one by one. The phosphatase floods the spaces between neurons during deep sleep, methodically cutting connections without any preference for what those connections represented to you. It does not know that the synapse it just dissolved was your memory of your grandmother's face, or the recipe she taught you yesterday. It does not know that the connection it spared was a meaningless advertising jingle, or the color of the car parked outside your apartment. It simply applies a chemical rule: weak connections collapse, strong connections survive, and what survives is what you will still remember tomorrow. The process continues for hours, methodically reducing every synapse formed during the day to a fraction of its waking strength permanently. By the time you wake up, an entire generation of synaptic connections has either been dissolved into chemical components or sufficiently weakened Your brain has effectively rolled back to the synaptic baseline you had the previous morning, plus only the connections that proved strong enough. The mathematics is brutal in its precision. Somewhere between 15 and 20% of all new synapses formed yesterday are completely gone now. That percentage represents memories, conversations, sensations, learnings, and experiences that no longer exist anywhere in your brain or anywhere in the universe. The information is not stored elsewhere. It is not waiting in some forgotten archive. It has simply ceased to be a thing that happened. The synapses that survive the nightly purge are the ones that were strengthened multiple times during the day through repetition or emotional force. If you saw the same person twice today, their face was reinforced and is now likely to survive into tomorrow as a memory. If something made you cry, made you laugh hard, made you afraid, the emotional weight strengthened the synapse far above the deletion threshold. If you focused intensely on learning something, your active attention reinforced the synaptic pathway, lifting it above the cutoff line for survival. The brain uses emotion and repetition as filters because they reliably indicate importance, and across evolution that filter has kept the species alive. Strong emotional events from your childhood survive into your 70s because the original synapse was so strongly forged that no nightly cleanup erases it. The memories you carry from 20 years ago are not preserved because they were old. They survive because they were never weak enough. Every night for 20 years, your brain decided again that those particular synapses were too strong to dissolve, and so they stayed alive. The memories that fade are the ones that did not impress you in the moment, that did not trigger emotion, that you never repeated. The face of the person who served your coffee last Tuesday is gone forever because it never crossed the threshold of being worth saving. The conversation you had with a stranger at a bus stop 2 months ago is gone because nothing about it reinforced itself enough. The exact words your best friend said to you during a casual moment last week are mostly gone now, replaced by a vague impression. Your brain kept the impression, deleted the specifics, and the gap was filled with reconstructed approximation that feels just as real as memory. This is why human memory is famously unreliable. You are not remembering events. You are remembering reconstructions of events your brain decided to save. The original experiences themselves were largely erased years ago, and what remains is a heavily edited highlight reel, filtered through emotion and repetition. The most disturbing implication of synaptic homeostasis is what it means for the experiences you assume you would have remembered forever and always. You probably believe that yesterday morning you brushed your teeth, made coffee, checked your phone, and started your day in some specific order. The truth is that most of those moments are already gone, dissolved by phosphatase last night while you slept peacefully in your bed. You do not remember the exact temperature of the coffee, the exact words on your phone screen, the exact movements of your hands. Those synapses were too weak, too unremarkable, too repetitive of every other morning, and so the system pruned them as part of routine cleanup. What survived is the rough narrative outline, the general feeling of starting your day, the abstract knowledge that morning happens every single day. Tomorrow your brain will do this to today, will erase whatever you do not actively reinforce, will keep only what crosses the threshold. Every day of your life is being filtered through this same chemical process, and the percentage of any given day that survives is small. The you who remembers an entire week from 5 years ago does not actually remember most of those days, just the highlights that survived. The other 90% of those days was deleted at a rate of 15 to 20% per night until almost nothing was left. There are entire weeks of your past that are no longer accessible to you in any form because they failed the survival test repeatedly. The specific person you were during those weeks, with their specific thoughts and specific feelings and specific words, no longer exists in your brain. That person was assembled from synaptic connections that have all been chemically dissolved by now, leaving only abstract narrative residue behind in their place. You are, in a very literal sense, missing pieces of your own past, life that your brain decided you did not need to keep. Those missing pieces are not in storage somewhere waiting to be remembered. They have been physically erased from the substrate of who you are. This raises an unsettling philosophical question that sleep researchers have been quietly avoiding for decades since the discovery of synaptic homeostasis was confirmed. If a meaningful percentage of you is erased every night, replaced with no new information, who exactly is the person who wakes up? The brain that goes to sleep on Sunday is not chemically identical to the brain that wakes up on Monday morning. By definition, several billion synaptic connections that existed at midnight have been chemically dissolved by the time the alarm clock rings 6 hours later. The continuity of your identity, your sense of being the same person from one day to the next, is something your brain manufactures. Your brain constructs the feeling of continuity by holding on to a small core of highly reinforced synapses that span entire decades undisturbed forever. Those core synapses are your name, your face, your earliest memories, your loved ones, your strongest fears, all the things that always survive. Around that core is a constantly shifting cloud of weaker synapses that get added and pruned each night, the daily texture of your life. You are the core plus the cloud, but the cloud is being rewritten every single night that you sleep, edited without your consent. The version of you that lay down last night is not exactly the version of you that opened your eyes this morning at all. Several billion connections were severed. The brain you wake up with is slightly leaner, slightly different, slightly less detailed than the previous night. This happens every single night of your life from infancy until the night your brain finally stops pruning anything ever again at all. By the time the average human reaches age 80, somewhere around a quadrillion individual synaptic connections have been formed and then erased forever. That is approximately 1,000 trillion experiences, observations, sensations, and details that briefly existed in a human mind and then no longer existed. None of them were stored anywhere else. None of them were preserved on any external medium. They simply happened and then were gone forever. The total information loss across a single human lifespan exceeds the storage capacity of every digital archive ever built by human civilization combined. You are the survivor of a nightly purge that has erased more of your own experience than was ever preserved in any history book. Most of your life has already been deleted, and most of the rest will be deleted before you ever finish living it through. The version of yourself you can remember is a tiny fraction of the actual continuous experience that made up your existence over the years. Everything you ever were, did, saw, or felt has either been kept or dissolved by the same small molecule working quietly in the dark. Tonight, when you close your eyes and drift away into the slow waves of deep sleep, the phosphatase will begin its quiet work again. It will move through the spaces between your neurons, methodically cutting the weakest synaptic connections you formed today, sparing none for sentimental reasons. By the time you wake up, some part of who you are right now in this exact moment watching this will already be gone. The version of you who learned about this for the first time will not be the version of you that remembers learning it. Every single night for the rest of your life, the same molecule will continue to delete you, one small piece at a time.